Sunday evening, you don't know what to do with your life, you have to work tomorrow, you are just so bored at home doing nothing, maybe just laying down in the bed and counting some ships. So, if you feel that way, I bring you some good chess. My name is Pepe Cuenca, Spanish Grandmaster, and I'm gonna show you today the game of the day of round number 2 of the Sharjah Grand Prix series. The fight that I'm gonna show to you is the game that happened between Rapport, the Hungarian player, and Vachier-Lagrave. Rapport, one of the most creative players in the world, one of the most dynamic players. He plays a really strange opening sometimes. MVL, he is top 3 or top 4, I just don't remember right now. So one of the best players in the world, extremely super strong grandmaster. So as usual, Richard decides to surprise in the opening by playing b3. This time, so not e4, not d4. This is for boring people, so I'm just gonna go b3 and try to kick your ass. So there are many ways of reacting against this b3 opening. So you can play e5 or d5, both are natural. So normally black tries to occupy in the center. So MVL played d5, bishop b2, and bishop g4. Really interesting move. So one of the ideas is if white goes knight f3, you can give your bishop pair by taking on f3, but also you will ruin a little bit white pawn structure. And in these types of positions where normally by playing bishop g4, your weakness is b7, so the queen cannot come to b3. So that's why it's a really natural move, bishop g4. Also aiming to put the bishop out of the pawn chain. And Rapport plays h3, kicking this bishop back to h5 and d3. You wanna develop your knight via d2 and knight d7, controlling the e5 square. So at this point, Richard decides he wants to go and attack Vachier-Lagrave, and he plays g4, extremely aggressive move. And after bishop g6, not happy with g4, just maybe he could think, now I'm gonna develop pretty calm with bishop g2, knight f3. No, he goes and plays f4, Facundo pawn, aiming to create an attack extremely fast on the king side. So the threat is of course f5, but maybe if you manage to develop with knight f3, bishop g2, and short castle, you will have a really nice position. So black has to do something about this. MVL, he played e6, the most natural move, just stopping f5 and threatening to go queen h4. But at this point, even after f4, e5 was very interesting. So let's say f5, and now queen h4 check, king d2, and bishop takes f5. And this position is far from clear, because after bishop c5, actually black is threatening to go queen f4. For example, if you go knight f3, developing an attack in one piece, as you heard at school. So queen f4 is just crashing. After king e1, bishop e3. So avoiding that your king escapes via d2, and now you are threatening the queen g3. Actually, the position is much better for black. If you don't trust me, you can trust the engine. So, okay, after bishop c5, white could play e3, stopping queen f4. But you can just develop with knight e7, aiming to take on f5. After, let's say, queen f3, e4, queen f4, takes, and knight takes f5. This position is extremely unclear. So black is a piece down, but you have 2 pawns, and this king is kind of naked in the center, right? But okay, so Vachier-Lagrave played e6. Of course, now Rapport plays knight f3, developing one piece and stopping queen h4 and h5 from Vachier-Lagrave. So maybe that white has advanced too much his pawns on the king side. So it's time to create some interesting squares for black, because now white doesn't want to take on h5. This actually ruins your pawn structure, and g5 is not ideal, because you will have now to deal with this f5 square that actually black can use it. But the thing is, you can actually you can't contain this like this, because if you play bishop g2, takes, rook takes h1, give me, and now knight h6, putting some pressure on the g4 pawn. You are forced now to go g5 and knight f5, and black is just fine in this position. Look at the squares, for example. and there is no danger on the king side, right? So after h5, Rapport decided to close with g5, and now knight e7 from MVL, aiming to go to f5. Look at these two tasty squares, g3 and e3. So this bishop is in the best diagonal, but after playing d3, this e3 square is extremely weak. Of course, would be really nice if white could play now e4, stopping this knight f5 ideas, but it's not possible. So that's why white decides to go knight h4, controlling this f5 square. So after knight f5, white has two options. One is to take on f5. Actually, this is what happened in the game. And the other option is to take on g6. Okay, you have gained the bishop pair, but this knight is extremely strong. So let's say if you play e4, takes, and knight e3. After queen e2, you can play bishop c5. And this position, the Jin says, is actually more or less equal, but it's I think it's much easier to play with black. You can play queen e7, long castle, etc. You can take on f1, and if white just goes greedy and takes this pawn on g7, you just play rook g8, bishop goes back, and rook f8. And look at Facundo; it's so sad there. You know, it's not having fun. Facundo is just the rook on f8 is gonna take it in the next move. Position is much better for black. So after knight f5, the Hungarian player took on f5, and then you have a choice here, and you have to think what you want to do. You can take with the pawn on f5, giving you this e file to put some pressure in the future, and also stopping e4 ideas from white. But the thing is, this bishop on g6 is not gonna play in the whole game basically. You cannot find any suitable diagonals for this little guy. This poor bishop, you know, is just so sad here. It's just not having fun at all. So that's why MVL decided to go to take with the bishop on f5. So we'll have more prospects in the future. But of course you have to deal now with the e4 advance that white aims to play in the next move. So let's say if you play something passive like bishop e7, you can play e4, there is some pressure on d5, so you are forced to take here. And after bishop g6, you see that now after queen e2, for example, knight d2, long castle, rook f1, boom, boom, f5, h4, all the pieces coming to kill MVL. So this is not a good deal for black. Instead, after bishop g2, black actually has to play very dynamic now. And this is what MVL did. And he went and played e5. The thing is, white cannot take on e5, because if you take on e5, the g5 pawn is hanging, and this is just much better for black. So, and also you cannot take on d5. I mean, you can, you're not gonna die, but the thing is, you're gonna end up being worse. After c6, bishop g2, he takes f4. Look at this square, so tasty. Look at this pawn on g5. This bishop later can join the party. There's a nice party on the king side here. So that's why white decided to go and played queen d2. Now f takes e5 is a threat, since the g5 pawn is defended. So that's why black took on f4, e takes f4, queen takes f4. Now your bishop is attacked, your pawn is attacked, so you do this bishop e6 move with the double purpose. Just first one is surviving, second is defending the d5 pawn. And knight d2, just developing some piece, maybe aiming to go long castle in the next move. And bishop d6, just developing and winning one tempo. Also, white has to pay attention to the pawn on g5, so the only reasonable square where you defend this pawn is queen h4, and this is what Richard played in the game. And you see this is extremely chaotic, extremely crazy opening by Richard Rapport. It's hard to see these types of openings in the top tournaments. So at least me, I'm quite happy to see this extremely strange positions. As you can see here in our beautiful bar, the Jin says is more or less equal. So extremely interesting. So after queen h4, now the g7 pawn is attacked. So black decides to go knight e5. So stopping this bishop to come to g7, and also aiming to go knight g6. Kicking this queen back, and there are not so many squares where the queen can protect the g5 pawn after knight g6, so that's why white played knight f3. So after knight g6, you can remove your queen, and the g5 pawn is protected, right? There are two options, queen f2 or queen a4. This is what Richard played, queen a4. So now bishop d7, you have to play bishop g7. If you play c6, the g7 pawn will fall. So now queen to d4. And we have to analyze this position quite in depth now, because there are many threats here and there are many possibilities why black could go bishop g3. As you learned in school, Pepe, why I cannot give a check on g3 and then you cannot castle anymore? Well, it's possible, but maybe you are helping a little bit white, because now the artificial castling is coming, and then it's difficult to, sorry, I look quite stupid. it's difficult to play to defend the g7 pawn. So yeah, that's why black played a really interesting move at this point, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, he played c5. And there are two possibilities, or three possibilities. So the first one is to take one pawn, the second one is to take the other pawn, and the third one is to remove the queen. Let's try to understand the three possibilities. So let's say after queen takes d5, you can just play bishop c6. Just after queen c4, just knight f4. And look at how much counterplay you have created. Look at this bishop pair, you know, they're extremely awesome, yeah. And this knight is stacking on the g2 knight, the e2 pawn, just too much counterplay. Actually, black's position is a little bit easier to play. The second option is to play queen to g7, and at least there is one variant where black can force a draw. Let's say after bishop f8, queen f6, bishop e7, queen g7, and this is a draw. But also black could try to go and play for the win. Let's say after queen g7, here in this position, d4 is extremely interesting, just cutting this bishop, and then you want to go bishop f8, and after queen f6, you will trade queens, and then you will have a lot of counterplay, given the fact that you have the e file to put some pressure and a lot of tasty squares, for example e3 and g3, and also your knight is extremely well positioned to jump to f4 and to create some pain on the king side. Let's just as an example just give this line: short castle, bishop f8, queen f6, boom boom, and rook g8, and you are threatening to go queen knight f4. Sorry, you can go long castle here, bishop d6. Also, you are threatening to go bishop h3 in certain lines. So I think from the practical point of view, it's a bit easier to play with black. That's why maybe Rapport decided to go for queen e3, king f8, and short castle here. Of course, you're gonna go long castle here. There is a bishop f4, and you just lose the queen on the spot and the game. And yeah, so that's why he went short castles. As you can see here, this is so double-edged because you have a lot of weaknesses here. So the h3 pawn can be attacked later. Let's say some queen c8, and you have the f4 square. This bishop is like a monster. Sorry, this bishop is a monster. But also, we cannot forget that the f7 pawn is also attacked with this beautiful on with this rook on f1. So it's extremely double-edged. And after short castle, black decided to go and play queen c7. So we have to say that bishop f4 is not possible because the c5 pawn is hanging. So that's why queen c7 in this position was played. You cannot play actually queen c8, targeting straight away the h3 pawn, because this runs into knight e5, and then you see a lot of problems on the f5 pawn. You have to take everything basically on e5. You don't want to lose. And after queen takes e5, there is actually a beautiful line that I'm gonna show you right now. d5 pawn is attacked. There is a lot of threats here. g6, for example. Let's say after bishop takes h3, there is boom, rook takes f7. After king takes, the other rook comes and joins the party. King g8 only move, bishop takes, king h7, g6 takes, and bishop f7, and after king h6 or h7, queen h5 with checkmate. So that's why Vachier-Lagrave played accurately and played queen c7, that actually controls the e5 square, also allows this rook to come to the center, and also bishop f4 now maybe could be a threat. So that's why Richard went back with the queen d2, so you can play e3 in case of bishop f4. And now rook e8. Bringing a rook to the center, but also aiming to go bishop f4 and then installing some beautiful bishop on e3. That's why white stops this and prophylactically plays e3. And now king g8, removing this king from the dangerous file and maybe just aiming to go for some artificial castling later. But now Rapport plays in the center and plays the move d4. So he thinks he could try to play against this isolated pawn in d5. And also after some exchanges here, then he could use the d4 square for some of his minor pieces. But from this point, MVL starts playing so well. At this point, he actually creates a lot of troubles to the Hungarian player, and he plays the beautiful move queen c8. Now you can see the troubles that white has on the king side, so it's not possible to play king h2, so you are basically forced to play h4, and this gives us a lot of play in this diagonal. And MVL played bishop h3, and the idea is just very simple. He wants to go queen g4. This queen here will of course will create an enormous pressure on the g2, but also you are aiming to take on h4 with this knight. So basically it's just extremely hard for white now not to lose any material. So Denjin says here that white should play bishop h3, but after queen takes, queen g2, queen g4, extremely accurate move. So after the trade of queens, the h4 pawn is gonna fall. So let's say d takes e5, takes, bishop d4, takes, and now rook e2, and you can see that actually black is on top. So after bishop h3, Rapport play knight e5, and I really like now the way that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave simplified the position. It was very clean, and I really like it. So let's just show it. So he took on e5, d takes e5, bishop takes e2, queen takes e2. Now there are certain lines after taking on h4, queen takes d5 that favor black, but this is extremely clean. He went on playing queen g4. Now he wants to make sure that the queens are off the board, so you are not going to have troubles related with the f7 pawn, and then h4 is going to be extremely weak, e5 is going to be extremely weak, sorry. Wow, man, it's so difficult, all these words for Spanish, you know. Alright, so queen g4 and rook ad1 was played. After knight h4, takes, rook takes d5. One could ask, Pepe, what's going on here? You said that black was on top, but now I just see here some rook on d5 targeting the c5 pawn, aiming to go to the 7th rank. What's the point here? Well, the point is after knight f3, this rook is gonna join the party. This rook on the 7th rank is gonna be so happy. It was so sad on the corner there, crying on h8, right? It was punished on h8 by the teacher in the classroom, but now it's joining the party on the 7th rank. It's so happy that's gonna collect this c2 pawn. Let's say after king g2, as happened in the game, check, king g3, rook c2, and now you defend the c5 pawn, you attack the bishop on b2, and then you wanna collect the a2 pawn, right? So rook f2 was played, takes, and then fresh foot on g5, and not only taking on g5, but also stopping white from taking on c5, since there is a fork here on e4. So rook c2, sorry, king g3, knight d6, blocking the bishop, the pawn on e5. So this is basically one position. You need a little bit of technique, and I think MVL has quite a bit, so he didn't have problems to convert this. Let's just see what happened. Rook d7. The passive defense works by playing rook b8, then maybe trying to bring your king via f8 and e8, but he went for the active play. Rook d8, takes, rook d2, now the a2 pawn is gonna fall, bishop a3, takes, and rook e2. Now you see that the e3 pawn is basically almost impossible to defend. The only way is playing bishop c1, rook c2 now was played, so the idea is now to go, in case of bishop a3, you wanna go rook c3, attacking the 2 pawns on b3 and a3. See, when rook a1, rook c3, takes, king f5, rook d3, check, king h7, rook a7, and rook d1, and Rapport collapsed. The position was lost anyway, so he took an f7, and now intermediate move, knight d8, kicking this rook back. And after rook, let's say rook c7. Now check, previous check. So you force this king to go back, and then in the next move after king e4, sorry, rook takes c1, and few moves later white resign, because you are just a piece down, and with these guys of 2800 is just nothing going to happen. You are just going to lose the game. So an extremely crazy game as usual. When we see Richard Rapport, it's extremely creative, but this time Maxime Vachier-Lagrave played a really interesting game. He broke in the center with e5, then he played this nice queen c8, targeting all the weaknesses on the king side. So I think, yeah, I think he's the only player with 2 points, just leaving the tournament so far. So as you guys know, you could follow all the action from tomorrow again at 12 p.m. at 12 just Central European time. So just take care and see you in the next video. Maybe me, maybe Jan, I don't know, whatever. Just have fun and be good. Bye bye. Bye bye, mi piccolissima